There's a silent, unspoken rule in the military, one they don't write down in any handbook. It's a rule that says some people just don't belong. And for years, they told Sergeant Olivia Vance that she didn't belong. They said she was a medic, a healer, safe, reliable, but never truly a soldier. They called her the Gilded Cage, a woman so capable she could save a life with one hand, but too fragile to ever be trusted with a weapon in the other. They built a beautiful cage for her, filled it with praise and medals for her medical work, but they never, ever let her out. But what happens when that cage shatters? What happens when the only thing standing between a team and total annihilation is the one person they were never supposed to trust? What happens when the gilded cage opens and the only thing left to save them is a medic with a sniper soul? This is a story about a war we don't often talk about. A war not just against the enemy, but against prejudice. A story of a woman who was a soldier in her heart long before she was ever called one. This is about what happened in the scorching deserts of Nevada when an ambush broke the rules, and a medic had to break the one rule she was never supposed to break. The one they told her would get her kicked out of the military forever. Don't touch the rifle. And she did. The air in the Nevada desert didn't just feel hot, it felt alive, a dry, suffocating heat that made every sound echo, the kind of heat that turned sweat into dust before it even had a chance to drip. In this unforgiving landscape, Sergeant Olivia Vance was in her element, not as a soldier, but as a medic. She moved with a purpose, her hands a blur of motion as she bandaged a shrapnel wound on a private's arm. Her movements were precise, quiet, and utterly professional. She was the best they had. Everyone knew it, but no one said it out loud. Instead, they'd call her by her nickname, the Gilded Cage, a beautiful, fragile thing meant to be admired from a distance, never truly part of the fight. She was used to the whispers. She was used to the side glances when she walked past the training range, the jokes about her being more comfortable with a needle than a rifle. They were like background noise, a constant hum that she had learned to tune out. But the one voice she couldn't tune out was her own, reminding her of the promise she made, a promise to her mother after her father, a legendary marksman, was lost in a training accident. "Promise me, child," her mother had said, her voice a fragile whisper. "Don't let another gun break our family." Olivia had kept that promise. She chose to heal, not to harm. She became a medic, patching up the wounds others created, believing that was her purpose. But purpose can be a double-edged sword, especially in the military. It can be a comfort, but it can also be a cage. Today, her gilded cage was about to be put to the ultimate test. The mission was a simple patrol, a routine sweep of a supply route. But in the military, routine is often just a prelude to chaos. The first warning was the silence. The crackles on the radio went dead, and the recon drone dropped out of the sky without a sound. Then, the ambush. It came from the high ground, a relentless hail of fire that pinned the unit down. Chaos erupted, screams of pain, the roar of machine guns, and the gut-wrenching sound of a convoy vehicle exploding. Olivia's world narrowed down to her medical kit and the bleeding soldier in front of her. But in the midst of the chaos, she saw something else. The two snipers of her unit were down, one with a leg injury, the other unconscious. The enemy on the hill had the perfect vantage point, and without long-range support, the team was doomed. Then she saw it, lying on the ground near the disabled Humvee, a rifle. Not just any rifle, a Barrett M82, the one weapon that could turn the tide of this battle. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat against her own promise. The voice of her squad leader, a man who had never fully trusted her, screamed into the comms, "We're pinned. We need long-range fire. Now." He didn't look at her. No one did. To them, she was just the medic. She was the one who fixed the broken, not the one who broke the unfixable. But in that moment, her purpose, her cage, felt like a lie. All the praise, all the medals, they meant nothing if her team bled out right in front of her. Olivia looked from her medical kit to the rifle. The choice was agonizing, a battle between a promise she made and a duty she had to fulfill. She took a deep breath. It was time to break the cage. Olivia's mind raced, a whirlwind of duty, memory, and raw primal instinct. Her hand, so accustomed to the delicate work of sutures and bandages, now hovered over the cold steel of the Barrett M82. A whisper from her past echoed in her ears, the voice of her father. A person who runs from chaos is a victim. A person who steps into chaos to end it is a warrior. She had always chosen to run, to heal the damage others had done. But now, running wasn't an option. Her team was bleeding, and her promise to her mother felt like a betrayal to the very people she was sworn to protect. Without a moment's hesitation, she knelt, her movements fluid and purposeful. No one saw her. Everyone was too busy fighting for their lives to notice the small medic running out of the tent, grabbing a rifle. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't need to. In that fleeting moment between chaos and instinct, she racked the bolt. A small act, but to her it was like tying back an invisible thread severed long ago. The familiar weight of the rifle, the worn grip, the scent of gunpowder and dust felt like home. She put on her torn glove, a small act that brought back a flood of memories. She lay prone, her body melting into the sand, the sun blurring everything like a misaligned scope. All the noise, the gunfire, the screams faded into the background. Only her breath remained, a steady, measured rhythm. For the first time in years, her hands didn't tremble. She adjusted the sight by instinct, the way her father had taught her on a dusty training range. She saw the targets clearly, 3 armed figures preparing to launch grenades at the rear line. She held her breath, not with strain, but with gentle calm. The first bullet left the barrel, a sharp, clean sound. A deafening crack erupted from the hilltop. An enemy wielding an RPG was blasted from his position. In her earpiece, someone shouted, "Who just fired?" Vance, the spotter, had seen it all through the drone. He bolted upright in his seat, unable to believe his eyes. The only person kneeling behind the Barrett, covered in dust and blood, was Olivia. "Who gave you permission to shoot?" he whispered over the radio, not expecting a reply. Olivia didn't answer. She only adjusted her sight and pulled the trigger again. For the next 8 minutes, Olivia fired 5 shots. 4 hit their targets. 1 destroyed an enemy sensor. The remarkable part? She was still wearing her medic's armband. In the pause between shots, she would leap down, bandage an injury, administer fluids, and set up a blood shield, then return to her rifle position. The hand that held a needle and the hand that held the trigger never stopped saving lives. A veteran sniper later recounted, "I used to think people like her didn't belong on the front line. That day I saw how wrong I was." The battle ended as the sky turned toward dusk. The gun smoke hadn't yet cleared, but the sweep teams confirmed no additional casualties in the convoy. It was an almost unthinkable achievement. A commander exclaimed, "That's something I've never seen a nurse, saving lives with both hands, one to heal, one to fight." After the meeting, no one called Olivia the nurse anymore. They called her by her name, simple, quiet, but irreversible. She had broken the cage, and in doing so, she had finally found her true place on the battlefield. The gunsmoke had not yet cleared, but the silence that followed Olivia's last shot was louder than any explosion. It was the sound of a team coming back from the brink, a silence filled with awe and a dawning realization. The men and women of the convoy were safe, an unthinkable achievement in that terrain. For the first time in her career, Olivia wasn't rushing to bandage a wound. She was simply there, kneeling behind the Barrett, a sentinel of quiet authority. Vance, the spotter, was the first to reach her. He climbed the hill slowly, the dust settling around his boots. He found her sitting there, her shoulders relaxed, head resting lightly against the rifle as if asleep, not from exhaustion, but because she was at peace. He sat beside her, glancing at the rifle, then at her. "I thought you weren't allowed to touch it," he said, his voice a low murmur, completely devoid of the usual bravado. Olivia gave a faint smile, not looking at him. So did I. A silence stretched between them, thicker than the gun smoke, but within it was an acknowledgement, quiet yet undeniable. When she descended the hill, her teammates didn't look at her with surprise. They looked at her with gratitude. That night, when everything grew quiet, Olivia sat alone under the moonlight and wrote a few lines in her old medical notebook. She didn't write about the Barrett or the enemy. She only wrote, "Today I used everything I knew to keep others breathing, whether with a needle or a bullet." News of the event spread through the camp like wildfire. No one believed it. No one expected it. Commander Hedon Greaves, a grizzled veteran with a limp from Fallujah, sat silently in the tactical room, staring at the screen, replaying the battle's audio. Vance's voice came through the headset. "The shooter is medical." The commander recalled the moment he'd looked Olivia in the eye and said, his voice near a threat, "If you touch that Barrett, you're out of the team for good." Now that same Barrett had saved the team, and she was the one who pulled the trigger. The post-mission debrief was packed. Everyone was there, not for the report, but out of curiosity. Olivia sat in the back row, silent. But the eyes fixed on her were different. Rico, a renowned SEAL sniper, stood up to speak first. He said, "I thought you were doing medical," he said, his voice half laughing, half serious. "Didn't know you were out there wrestling with death." The room burst into laughter, not mocking laughter, but the kind filled with relief and respect. The laughter of people who'd stood at death's edge and returned whole thanks to someone else. Vance spoke next, no humor this time. He simply said, "If it wasn't for Olivia's first shot, I probably wouldn't be sitting here." Greaves stood up. No one interrupted him. He looked at Olivia, then pulled from his pocket a challenge coin bearing the symbol of an oak tree. He said, "This coin was meant for a formal ceremony, but some people don't need fanfare to be recognized." He walked over and placed the coin on the table in front of her. That sound carried more weight than any medal. The next week, during a combined medical tactical training, a recruit asked, "Is she even qualified?" The instructor merely turned, pointed to a new sniper's glove hanging on the medical bay door, and said, "She's the only one here who's pulled the trigger to save the whole team." The Gilded Cage had been broken, and from its ruins a true soldier had emerged, respected not for her rank, but for her unwavering dedication to saving lives no matter the cost. Thank you so much for watching Olivia's journey. Her story is a powerful reminder that labels and expectations can often limit us, but our true value is revealed when we decide to break free and act with purpose. What about you? Have you ever felt like you were put into a gilded cage by others' expectations? Let me know in the comments below.